Welcome back to the Ben Mulroney Show, and it's not often that we get to speak to a premier in Canada. It's not often that a premier stops by the Ben Mulroney Show, but sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Please welcome to the Ben Mulroney Show, the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith. Welcome to the show.
So nice to finally meet you. I've talked to you several times. It's nice to meet you face to face. I'm glad to be here.
So let's talk about why you're in Toronto.
We're doing I call it a mission all through Eastern Canada. So I started off at the Montreal Chamber of Commerce, talking about the ways in which Quebec and Alberta can work together to develop out our respective economies.
How did that resonate?
Very well.
Yeah.
And I noticed it because I came here in April, and that's when I realized that we already have a lot of business in Quebec, from Quebec into Alberta with the Caisse de dépôt et placement. Yeah. They fund a lot of enterprises in Quebec. We just announced that CAE is going to be doing pilot training, another great Quebec-based aerospace company that also is in defense. And I think there's going to be lots more options. So National Bank, I was a little disappointed that they came and scooped up one of our banks, Canadian Western Bank, but it's actually been a really wonderful connector.
Oh, good.
Because they bought into Alberta because they believe there's so much opportunity there. And that to me has been the whole point of this mission. I did an event in Ottawa, did an event earlier with Eurasia Group in Toronto. It's the same message. We really should be talking about how we bring the supply chain home to Canada.
Okay, so why don't you give me that message? What did you share that seems to have resonated across central Canada?
I can tell you what I've learned. It seems like, I don't know who it was, but sometime 20 years ago, someone decided that Canada didn't need to be a resource-based or manufacturing-based economy. And as a result, we started moving more and more towards services, which is fine. But here we are now full circle, where most of the services are going to be AI generated and driven. And AI requires a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. And AI also requires a lot of manufactured parts. And so we're sort of scratching our heads saying we want to do all of this aspirationally, but we're so reliant on the United States for our supply chain. So I want to see if there's a way that we can bring some of that home, whether it's in Alberta or whether it's Ontario and Quebec. So I think what came out of it is that the chambers are going to take the lead on trying to get myself and Doug Ford and Francois Legault together in a room to say, let's identify the things we need and let's identify how we're going to encourage our respective businesses to develop that.
So I'm glad you mentioned there was consensus when Donald Trump got elected, more or less consensus as to what we as a nation need to do. Broad strokes, right? We had to tear down interprovincial trade barriers. We had to start building out our resource sector, and more or less everyone started buying into that. Does it feel like that's slowing down?
Well, I believe my fellow premiers and the prime minister when they said that they wanted to do all of those things. It's part of the reason why we've decided to be a proponent on accelerating the idea of a West Coast BC pipeline. We know that we need that if we're going to open up new markets. Yeah. The best place to do that is in Asia. They already receive some of our product through Trans Mountain. The project that should have gotten built that got canceled by the predecessor government of Justin Trudeau, Northern Gateway, was approved and they canceled it. So we figured that this is a time to restart that conversation, and we're going to see whether or not there have been a lot of people wrapping themselves in the Canadian flag. Yeah. And now we actually see whether or not they're willing to walk that talk. I am. I've been here for exactly that reason. Let's find ways to work together. I promote every project of all of my peers, all of the premiers. I don't think there's a single one that I've opposed, and I would just hope that we'd be able to get that same consensus.
All right. Projects of national importance. That's the buzzword of the day. Yeah. And we have not yet seen a pipeline, and it wasn't in the first tranche. We're expecting the second tranche before the Grey Cup. Mm-hmm. How does it work? Are you in contact with that office? How much do you know before we find out? Or is it sort of like the announcement of who wins American Idol? We all find out at the same time.
There's a few things I'd say. I mean, what I'm pleased by is that we've seen that the Prime Minister chose to put the Major Projects Office in Calgary. Yeah. And he chose to put Don Farrell at the helm of it, who is somebody who actually has experience building a pipeline to the BC coast. Yeah. So I think that she already has an incredible amount of credibility among the business sector in Alberta. I count her as a mentor, an advisor. She's advised me on many things over the years. Okay. But I would say our relationship right now is with the Prime Minister. Yeah. That we need to have an agreement that goes beyond a particular project. he is very keen on the Pathways project, as are our oil sands companies. It's a project to get them carbon neutral by 2050.
Well, that was what I was going to ask. That there seems to be a grand bargain that needs to be struck here.
Yes.
And to Mark Carney's credit, I mean, he really did explain. As much as people said, "Why aren't you moving? Why aren't you moving?" He said, "There's a lot of stuff that needs to get done." And I think a lot of people are seeing that now. But look, the Liberals have their vision, and Conservatives have a different vision of how to be environmentally conscious, for example. But it is what it is. So are you prepared to? It's like a horse trading sort of situation, right?
I think the way I've looked at it is that if you want to spend $10 to $20 billion on this carbon abatement project, which is what Pathways is, you need a new revenue source to be able to pay for that. And if you can get a brand new 1 million barrel a day bitumen pipeline to new markets, then that can generate $20 billion a year.
Yeah.
So that becomes a long-term revenue stream to be able to do that. The thing is, no one will fill that pipeline unless we get rid of some of the bad laws. The emissions cap, net zero power regs, greenwashing bill, I could go on. But those are the reasons why we package those together.
How frustrating is it when you hear rational, sensible people say, well, no one from the private sector has stepped up yet. It's like, well, obviously no one from the private sector stepped up yet. It's because the regulatory situation is garbage.
Yes. Well, let's play an alternative pathway out.
Yeah.
What if one of the pipeline companies that we have at the table advising us, what if they had gone out and said we're going to be the proponent? They would have faced the same reaction.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to make the point that either this is a turning point for Canada and we're going to work together to get these major projects built, or the answer is going to be no. Yeah. And if it's no, then I think that says a lot about our country, and it says a lot about the promises that have been made by our politicians. So I'm taking everybody on faith here that they really do want to work together. And I guess we'll find out pretty shortly whether or not that's true. So
you're prepared to support this carbon abatement program.
Yeah.
What if the Liberals come to you and say, look, between us, we're gonna authorize a pipeline, but we need you to do more on the environmental file? The question, how far would you be willing to go for whatever they want in order to get what you need?
What I would say is that the previous iteration of the Liberals got too focused on how to get there as opposed to the final destination. And I think that Canada signed on, along with other countries, a plan to get to net zero by 2050. Yeah. So if you've got a 25-year time horizon, there's a lot that you can do. Yeah. Just dial back 25 years ago. We didn't even have iPhone, I don't think.
No, we did not.
Ago. So think of how transformative technology has been. And I don't know what will be created between now and 2050, but I know something will.
Yeah.
The problem is if you keep stepping in, trying to micromanage the solutions, saying you've got to have it done by 2026 or 2030 or 2035, the only option you're leaving people if the technology doesn't become available is to shut in. So that's what we're trying to say. Have a longer time horizon, because I'll tell you that the vision, I would say, of those who were in the Trudeau Liberal government was that they felt that Alberta's solution should be wind, solar, and batteries.
Yes.
That's what they thought. And we just saw with the failure of the power grid in Spain and Portugal that there's only a certain amount of unreliable energy you can have on the grid before you end up with catastrophe.
Yeah.
And we've already had some lack of reliability in our system. We've had about nearly 20 near failures of our power grid. So we have to have a better balance there. But we have a different approach. We say if the issue is emissions reduction, then let's transition away from emissions. Yeah. So the Pathways project has three elements to it. One is a carbon capture, utilization, and storage pipeline. And this is technology that is proven.
Yeah.
We have used CO2 for enhanced oil recovery for decades. Yeah. And so this is not unusual to do. The problem is it's not perfect. The second part is how do we bring in additional types of energy? That's why we're looking at nuclear, geothermal, hydroelectric, and interties. That's the second part of it. And the third is
give me the third one.
The third one is last mile, direct air capture, and we're pioneering that as well. So don't micromanage how you get there.
Yeah.
Let's agree on the destination and let technology do the work.
All right. Well, don't go anywhere. We're going to stay. If you're going to stick around, we've got more conversation with the Premier of Alberta herself. Danielle Smith is in conversation with Ben Mulroney on The Ben Mulroney Show. Thanks so much for watching the show. Now, if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of The Ben Mulroney Show. Welcome back to the Ben Mulroney Show, and thank you so much to Premier Danielle Smith for sticking around. I really appreciate it. Before the break, we were talking about sort of changes, tweaks to the differences between the Trudeau Liberals and the Mark Carney Liberals, and it does seem like you're telegraphing that they are more pragmatic, that they are more realistic, and they are more willing to work and collaborate. Is that fair to say?
Let me tell you just a prime example. So I talk about the 9 bad laws. I've mentioned a few of them, but one of them was the net zero vehicle regulation that was supposed to come in 2026.
Yeah.
20% of all cars being sold in Canada were supposed to be zero emission or hybrid vehicles. Alberta alone would have had to not only buy every car produced in Canada, but we still would have been short. And that's just Alberta.
Yeah.
So the only way to meet that target would be to start reducing the amount of gasoline and diesel powered vehicles that were sold. It made no sense.
No.
He put a pause on it.
Yep.
He's studying it for 60 days. I suspect he's going to discover that a longer pathway to achieve that aspiration.
Oh, I think we all know that is the inevitable conclusion, right?
Yes.
But that tomorrow is not today.
And he got there on that one. He got there on the retail carbon tax,
Yeah.
which was absolutely devastating to consumers. And so we think that he can do a review of all of the bad laws, bring them through the current context that we have. The current context is Russian invasion of Ukraine that created calamity in Europe. We've got continued conflict in the Middle East that creates instability. We have a problem with energy security writ large globally. We know that our friends in Asia would rather rely on a reliable partner like Canada than Iran or Venezuela or Russia for their products. And so those are the things that we have to realize in this new environment is that energy security is global security. And if we're going to be a partner with our NATO allies and a partner with America on military security, we've got to rethink the way we approach this.
Well, I agree with you. If we could be bringing that to the table, that's Canada as a middle power punching above our weight.
Correct.
And
let me add one more, AI data centers. I mean, I think that the world in the past was that the big data companies, they'd situate in a place that had reliable coal because they have to have absolutely reliable power. And then they'd come to a place like Alberta and buy wind and solar credits.
Yeah.
Well, now they need so much power that they've had to realize that you've got to get it from a reliable source. And natural gas is the one that can come on stream.
Well, what's his name? Kevin O'Leary was pushing a big AI data center, 7,000 acres.
Yes.
I don't know if that's happening, but what people should know is Canada is the perfect place to build these things because we've got all these small towns that are located in the north that have all the infrastructure that you need to deposit a giant AI data center up there, and all the employees will have a place to be.
Completely. I haven't had it independently verified that the site he chose could probably be the most perfect place in North America to build. And in addition, we complain about our weather, but our weather is an advantage in this case.
Absolutely.
6 months of winter, you end up having lower costs to cool it down. So, and also there's a lot of countries that are interested in sovereign compute. They want to be able to have their data secure, and we can provide that as well. So I would say that that's what has prompted a major rethinking. And I think we saw it during the last election, that the Liberals campaigned on Pierre Poilievre's platform.
Yes.
They said they wanted to be the strongest economy in the G7 and an energy superpower. And now we're seeing if they're actually going to implement the policies that they need to make that happen.
Well, let's talk about what's good for the economy. There is there's a rise in the sovereignist movement out west. Yeah. How do you see your role dealing with it?
I have been trying my role so far. I've been trying to give people such confidence in Canada that they won't sign the petition. That's what I have been hoping, because even though the initial petition being launched by somebody who's a pro-federalist would have asked the question, do you want to remain in Canada? If he gets the signatures, you have to remember that's a yes/no question, and there are consequences if the answer is no. And when you talk about the rise of separatism, there's always sort of this low key, maybe 10 to 15% of people who are disgruntled in Confederation, but it dissipates really quickly when Albertans are able to achieve their aspirations. The story I tell, not to embarrass you, but my dad was a big Brian Mulroney fan. And what happened?
So was I.
I bet. And what happened was in 1981, there was a separatist elected to the provincial legislature. But when Mulroney came in '84, he got rid of the National Energy Program, brought down interest rates, addressed inflation, negotiated free trade, and that movement disappeared. And so I've told Prime Minister Carney that Justin Trudeau created the modern iteration of that separatist movement, and he can do the same thing. He just has to address those bad laws that allow us to be able to develop our resources.
Now, there are, look, I don't want any separatist sentiment anywhere in the country, but they do exist. And there are differences between the Quebec version and what's happening out west. One is a grassroots version. The other is very top down. There's no talk of separatism until they elect a separatist party, right? And so that's, however, it does allow for provinces like Alberta and Quebec to perhaps find common cause, maybe see things through a similar lens. No, and I'm not talking about the lens of separation. I'm talking about the lens of we've got stuff we want to do and we don't feel that we can necessarily. So have you found a rapprochement with Quebec?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at where Quebec is at, and I think that they want to develop. They also are very interesting in that I think they've got over 60 offices internationally. And they do their own lobbying. I've been inspired by that. We've developed our own international offices, and I'm doing very much the same thing. But when you look at, say, for instance, Caisse de Dépôt owns 20% of DP World Ports, which is out of Dubai, but they operate the ports on the west coast of Canada. So Quebec has a stake in seeing that we end up finding more markets to go to Asia. And those are the kind of partnerships that I'm looking for, is how do we find not just a triple win. I mean, if we could develop out that port in Port-au-Prince Rupert to the extent that I think they want to, that helps Quebec. It also helps CN, which is we would need to twin the line there. CN, of course, is another a company based in here. Or in Quebec. We also have the potential to develop inland ports so that you could also integrate air service. And guess who benefits from that? Air Canada. We also know that with the aerospace industry, we have a growing aerospace industry in Alberta. That also benefits the supply chain if we can find partnerships there too.
Is anyone building? Are you guys going to build that high-speed rail between Edmonton and Calgary?
I just talked with Alstom. And they're another company that I think you could. If we are able to partner on those things, it also helps the environment too. If we can take cars off the road, get people moved around more conveniently, Premier, safer.
If you build a high-speed rail between Edmonton and Calgary before Montreal and Toronto get one, heads are going to explode up and down the highway.
We're going to work on that. We got a passenger rail. We got a passenger rail plan that is about to be released, and I can tell you that one is one of the options.
Before I let you go, let's take a step back of everything, and I want to ask you, where do you see Alberta in 10 years, economically, politically, culturally?
You know, Alberta seems to me to be always at the forefront of change. And we take hard jobs and we figure out how to make it work, whether it's breaking the land in farming or ranching or gas, then oil sands. And now our next big challenge is how do we attract in the AI data centers and that technology. You might be interested to know that we have in 2024, we had 155,000 direct jobs in oil and gas and 194,000 direct jobs in technology.
Really?
Yes. And so that to me demonstrates that we're diversified. This was the dream of Peter Lougheed, is have a diversified economy, and it's finally happening. So we're going to continue to diversify, but with oil and gas being the base to be able to help keep our economy driving forward, generate the revenue so that we can pay for the social programs people care about. That's what I hope we have. I hope we double our oil and gas production. I hope we have new markets in Asia. And I hope that we have a very peaceful confederation that everybody benefits from.
Danielle Smith, a pleasure to talk to you in person for the first time. I hope it's not the last.
You bet. I'll be back again.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for watching the show. Now, if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of The Ben Mulroney Show.